Welcome to the Champs App podcast, where we help players and parents demystify the world of minor hockey development and recruiting for both girls and boys. On today's podcast, I talk with Jack Sweeney, who will be the head coach of the new D1 hockey program at Assumption University. We talk about his extensive hockey coaching background, the new program at Assumption College, and everything that he's doing to recruit that first-year team. I really enjoyed my conversation with Jack, and I hope you do too. Before we start the podcast, I wanted to let you know about the app in Champs App. Champs App lets you create a free, beautiful online hockey resume to share with coaches, teams, and players. Your profile includes all the information coaches want to know to help decide if you are a player they want to keep on their recruiting radar. What makes Champs App unique is that you can then connect directly with college, prep, or team coaches, and they can then follow your updates. So when you add a new highlight video or a game to your schedule, they will automatically get notified of these changes to your profile. It's a really easy way to keep all your connections up to date. Just go to www.champs.app and click the sign up button to start your profile. And check out the links in the show notes to see a list of some of the college coaches already using Champs App that you can connect with. Stay tuned after the episode for more details on how easy it is to create your Champs App hockey resume. I would like to welcome to the podcast Jack Sweeney, who is the head coach of the new NCAA women's hockey program at Assumption University. Originally from Tewksbury, Massachusetts, Jack went to Salem State University and received graduate degrees from Endicott College and UMass Lowell. He has spent the last 28 years coaching hockey with stints at Iona, Babson College, Salem State, and Worcester Polytechnic Institute. He's also been involved in junior and youth hockey with the United States Premier Hockey League and ran the Eastern Hockey Federation. In 2017, he came to Assumption to be the first head coach of the women's club hockey team. And this past spring, the school announced that Jack would become the head coach of their newly added women's NCAA hockey team that begins play in 2023 and will play a D1 schedule. Welcome to the podcast, Jack.
Thank you very much. You missed my junior coaching career at the Walpole Stars of the Eastern Junior Hockey League.
Okay.
Yep, and I actually arrived here at Assumption in 2019, not 17.
Oh, I actually, sorry, forgive me for that. And I actually knew that, but I hadn't changed that in my notes. So thank you very much for correcting me. All right, so let's start off, since I don't know very much about your hockey history, telling us about how you got your love for the game of hockey.
My brother started playing when we were kids, and my brother did everything first. And once he did it, I decided I had to do it. And the goalie on the team got hurt, so they needed a goalie. So I asked if I could play, and it all started right there.
And so you enjoyed stopping the puck, or you enjoyed getting hit by the puck?
I enjoyed being part of the action for the entire game. 60
minutes of hockey.
I don't want to be on the bench.
I gotcha. I gotcha. And how good were you?
I was a solid college backup goalie until my senior year when I got to play. So my college career was played behind an All-American. We were very successful at Salem State, NCAA 3 years of the 4 I was there, a Final Four appearance as well. Wow. At the NCAA level. Yeah. So we were a pretty good team. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I was a solid number 2, and I got to be a number 1 by my senior year, for the most part.
And how did you end up at Salem State and playing hockey there?
You don't have enough time in your podcast to explain that story. Let's just say my Little League baseball coach was very influential in getting me to that place.
Gotcha. And were you a catcher when you played baseball?
I was. Okay.
So you're pretty agile and, not very uncommon for catchers and goalies to play those positions at the same time.
Sure. Absolutely.
Gotcha. And so once you finished at Salem State, tell us about what your next steps were. You got a couple of graduate degrees, and what did you do after Salem State?
So when I graduated Salem, I decided that I still had to do my student teaching. My career path was going to be high school phys ed teacher and hockey coach. That was my idea. And while I was doing my student teaching, the head coach at Salem State asked if I would be the goalie coach for the team, just be a volunteer for the year while I was doing my student teaching. And I said, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. And then I started, right away, had a really enjoyable first season. And then at the end of the season, the head coach asked me, he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to coach." He said, "Well, if you want to coach, this is what you have to do." He said, "If you're going to be a college hockey coach, you just have to be the most knowledgeable person in the rink. Every time there's a game, you've got to go to the rink and just know what is happening, know all the players, have an idea of everything that's going on. And eventually someday somebody's going to need to pay you for what you know." And that was the best advice I had ever gotten, and it worked.
Wow. Okay. And so when you're at Endicott, you were coaching, is that correct?
No. So my career path went from Salem State for 4 years as a part-time assistant coach. My first full-time job was at Babson. That was, just a 2-year stint. And then I got my first Division I assistant's job at Iona. Yep. I went from Iona to the Walpole Stars, which was the Eastern Junior Hockey League. That league no longer exists. That team now exists in the USPHL as the South Shore Kings. When I left that position, I went back to Salem as a volunteer assistant coach while I got into administration. So I was running the Eastern Junior Hockey League. I did that for 5 years. I did that because when the team I had in Walpole was sold to South Shore, they wanted to do their own thing, have their own coaching, which was totally understandable. And they immediately hired me back into the Eastern Junior League to run it. But I still loved coaching, so I was able to continue as a volunteer there. So that's how that went. But the commissioner told me, he said, just take this just for now. Just take this job for now until you get back in to your, into coaching. And I said, okay. Well, administration turned out to be a really good job, and I did it for 10 years. And while I was doing administration, I also did 2 master's degrees, one from Endicott. Yeah. I never worked at Endicott. I only got my education there. So I did a master's degree in
administration,
athletic management. Yep.
Yeah.
And then when I went to, I love the classroom. I mean, I love being in the classroom. I almost considered a PhD. So my wife is a professor at UMass Lowell. So I could go to and take classes there for free. So I decided to take those classes, and I got a second master's degree in peace and conflict studies.
I want to ask you specifically about that. I was wondering, did you take that purely out of interest, or is that something you can apply to the hockey world on a daily basis? A lot of peace and conflict.
Both. Go ahead. So peace and conflict studies was obviously as an administrator of a very, very robust junior hockey league, and then robust youth hockey league, 5,000 plus players. There's a lot of conflict involved in that.
Especially in Massachusetts.
Very much so. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's part of the process. So I wanted to learn a lot more about that. That master's degree was much more of a political science major than it really was a conflict resolution, major. When I got to the end, of that master's program, towards the last, the last third of the education, I started to focus my education on diversity and inclusion in youth sports as a medium for mitigating at-risk events in young people. So how sports plays a positive role in young people's lives. And I learned a great deal about that. And one of the things that they're not related at all, but this is what happened. One of the major things that came out of all of that research and all of the projects that I did had to do with who is actually being served by the youth sports market. And, males obviously dominate the youth sports market. I think everybody knows that. And then females, have different, different places in different sports, and specifically hockey, obviously relating to this podcast, is the one that I could speak to the most. But anyway, that master's education really did a lot to help serve me. I was also on the board of directors for Score Boston Hockey, which is part of the NHL's diversity program, the Hockey is for Everyone campaign.
Sure.
So there was a lot of intermingling with all of that.
Gotcha.
So that's where those educations came in.
Gotcha. So also a related question and how you became a coach and your interests is you were a goalie. And I'm actually surprised, like most people think goalies get, puck shot at their head and they may not be so bright. They just want to stop the puck. But in fact, a former NHL goalie once told me, you got it all wrong. We spend 60 minutes watching the entire game from an angle no one else can see, and they see more than anything. Yeah. And he is one of the, brightest hockey minds that I've met. In addition, I'd say almost 25% of the guests that I've had who are coaches on this podcast were former goalies. Is there something about being a goalie that also helps you become a decent coach and have such a long career?
I don't know if the two are related. I would agree with the sentiment that you just, that you just mentioned. The goalies definitely see the game as from a 360-degree view. We're not necessarily concerned about who scores the goals. We want to make sure that somebody scores them. Defensively, obviously, we're really concerned with tight defensive zone schemes and things of that nature, and making sure we identify those things. So I definitely think goaltenders have a 360-degree view of the game, but I don't know if goalies necessarily automatically mean you're going to be a good coach. Okay. I think I credit my coaching really to the people that I have been involved with, over the last 28 years. I think that's much more important than, the position I played. It's the people I've surrounded myself with. A lot of great mentors, a lot of great coaches, a lot of people in the, there was a group within Massachusetts. I used to do the Mass Select hockey groups, which used to take, this was before they changed the national camp model. Massachusetts would produce its own 15, 16, and 17-year-old teams. Yep. And then we'd go out to St. Cloud or Rochester, New York, and we would, play as the Massachusetts district against the other, districts. Well, with that organization, there was a lot of training that went with that, a lot of weekend trainings, a lot of regional camps within Massachusetts where the kids would come in. And the people that got brought into those programs, that program was run, kind of in conjunction with Mass Hockey, but kind of separate from Mass Hockey. It was called the Mass Satellite Training Program. And the people that I was exposed to within that group really helped formulate, my thinking as a coach.
Gotcha. And correct me if I'm wrong, your first time that you actually coached women's hockey was at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Is that correct? And correct. How did that come about?
So WPI I wanted to get out of administration and get back into coaching. And because at the time I had a 3-year-old daughter, and I said, if I'm going to leave administration and go back to coaching, it makes all the sense in the world to go back and coach on the women's side. I wanted as I said, my wife's a professor. The academic side of things, is going to be well served in our household. But I wanted my daughter, when she saw what her dad was doing, I wanted her to see me doing things, with women's activities, so that particular dynamic has exceeded anything I could have ever hoped for. My daughter actually feels like she's part of the team. She got mad this year when we had our team meeting and I wouldn't let her come. And she said, but Dad, I'm on the team. I have a jersey. I'm number 19, because the kids bought her a jersey, and the first year of the program was 2019. So they put number 19 on the jersey, and they have her name on a sweatshirt that they had bought her. So she really feels like she's part of the team. So the reason for switching was that, and it
Yeah.
has, as I said, it has exceeded my hopes.
And what were the differences that you saw and the similarities between coaching boys and men and girls and women?
Okay, so everybody always wants to ask that question. The difference is because 23 years of being involved in men's hockey, and all of a sudden I'm going to flip the switch and move to women's hockey. I've done nothing different in my approach to coaching, whether it was this startup program at WPI and then another startup program here at Assumption University. I did not approach anything differently with those teams than I did with my previous teams. I think the X's and O's are the same. The training, the skill development, all of the things I try to accomplish as a coach, I didn't change that one bit. My ability to relate to the players, I don't think, I think that might change a little bit based on, the gender dynamic of a, man coach versus, a man coach with male players. But my players at WPI were fantastic. They were great kids. They received me very well. Everything went well there. Assumption was a place I had long thought of as a great university to be at. So when this job opened, I jumped at it. And coaching the young women on this team has been like an experience that nobody could ever, imagine.
Let me ask you a technical question though. So
Sure.
My daughter just transitioned from playing boys hockey to girls hockey, and there are definitely differences in the game.
Sure.
For example, the boys hit a lot harder than the girls do. The girls still hit, just not in the same way, and therefore, female players tend to have more time with the puck because they're not as afraid of getting knocked over, at least straight on. So, how are some of those differences affecting how you coach?
So where that really impacts is in a defensive zone coverage strategy. In men's hockey, my strategy was very physical in the D zone. You had to eliminate your check and eliminate the body, every time. Players, were not allowed to spin off of you. When they dump a puck off, you had to finish that check. I think that particular element has changed a bit because you can't finish that check in the open ice, so to speak. So, there's a lot more, focus on zone coverage than there is on, just eliminating a check. Okay,
cool. All right. So now that we've kind of covered your coaching history and all the different stops that you've had, let's talk about Assumption University. So it's, as I understand it, it's, based in Worcester, Massachusetts, around 2,000 undergrads. And to me, the most intriguing number that I found in my research is that 25% of your students participate in at least one of the 24 NCAA programs that you do have. So a lot of your students are student athletes.
That 25%, I think, is low. I think it's higher than that. It's got to be closer to 30, 35.
Great. And so that's part of the culture, is like sports are a big thing at Assumption. So tell us about Assumption University, just overall, the academics and also the student life, especially for the athletes.
Yeah, I mean, the university, as I said, just a minute ago, having coached junior hockey for all those years and been involved, administratively for all those years, I'd seen a lot of people move on to this university. And I've never met an individual, not one, in all my professional life that went to Assumption University who didn't have the same exact response. They almost to the person, they roll their eyes with a big smile and just shake their head and say, it was the greatest experience. I loved going to school there. It was so much fun. I got a great education. I have a great job. I love the alumni network that I'm involved with. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So that part of it, I knew was something I wanted to be part of. And then, the university itself, it's a small New England college campus. It's in a rural area of the city, but yet it's still close enough to downtown to be part of this, college community that Worcester is. There's a lot of universities here in the city of Worcester. So we're close enough to access that, but we're still, kind of off, on our own in this little rural area. And it's just a beautiful place.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So maybe now just talk about the hockey program. So as you kind of said, you've been there for a few years now, and coaching the club team. Tell us about the club team. Are you still coaching the club team this year while you're planning for next year?
Yes.
And then also, I'm not sure if the current team plays at the Fidelity Bank Worcester Ice Center, but you are probably familiar with that ice rink because I believe you coached there previously when you were at WPI.
So the WPI women's program was not there.
Okay.
So no, I'm very familiar with that. No, our women's club team started in 2019. Our former athletic director, her name is Christine Lawther. Christine's had a vision. I really believe she was instrumental in getting this started. They wanted to see if women's hockey would gain traction here on campus. I don't think they really knew what they had or whether or not women would come to this university to play hockey. So they wanted to start it with what they call a blue and white program. It's a fully funded team, meaning we pay for all the ice and uniforms. That's what we pay for. And the team fees, it's administrative costs and all of that. Unlike a traditional club where the students do pay for it, our administration does pay those ice costs and administrative fees. So anyway, in 2019, we launched, I got the job and pretty much was like, hold your hand up if you want to play hockey on campus here. And we managed to get 11 skaters and 2 goalies. That was our team. It was a tough time because of those 11 skaters. There were very varying degrees of ability, quite significant actually in some cases. And we were trying to play these club teams that had kids who had played their whole lives and, had been continuing to play. So it was a challenge. But we did well. And part of my job was recruiting. I had to make sure I recruited a program. So the next year I brought in 11 players. We had COVID that year, which was unfortunate because we had 18 skaters on campus. And we didn't have a season, which was unfortunate. So we brought in another class and played last year. And I didn't know what to expect. And we exceeded all expectations. The team was, dynamic team in the club world. We play a lot of Division III teams with that blue and white team as well. And we're competitive in the world of D3 hockey. It's definitely harder for us. We've won some D3 games, with that team, but it's a lot more of a challenge when we play up in that. Yep. But yeah, no, our 2 leagues, the IWCHL, which is the Independent Women's Club Hockey League, is a quality league. And then our Division III group, we're part of an independent Division III group that make up a 4-team league, and we play each other twice and have a playoff with that. And yeah, that one's a lot of fun too, but more challenging. They beat us up a little bit at times.
Gotcha. So, and then in May, there was the big announcement that due to all the success that you've had, especially last year, you were going to add another team. So you're going to keep the club team, but you're going to have a team that competes at the D1 level. So maybe just talk about that announcement and kind of that coming about.
Yeah, I really appreciate you making that distinction. I think it's really important that everybody knows that this blue and white sports team is not going away. That team is full of some of the best people you could want to know in your lifetime. And it has provided an incredible avenue for them to continue playing the game they love at a competitive level. So that's not going to go away. But yeah, in May, we announced we were going to add, a varsity women's ice hockey program here at the NCAA level. And then, of course, making application to the NUHA really was an important element that went with it. And then gaining acceptance to the NUHA changes, that's a game changer for this university. That's a very respected league, growing immensely immensely, with tremendous coaches, in that league doing incredible things in recruiting and coaching of their program. So yeah, so to be involved with the NUHA was a real game changer for this university.
Yeah, so we've had 6 of the 7 coaches from NUHA on the podcast, and one of them on twice. And so you're going to be the 8th team, so that's a nice number for from a playoff perspective of
Sure.
4-2-1 to get a winner, and that winner goes on to the NCAA tournament starting this year, correct?
I mean, it's an incredible opportunity for this league and for all the players and coaches that are involved in this league to get that automatic qualifier. And I think it really changed. It's such an incredible thing for the NUHA, because the NUHA, has, it's just really in its infant stages of growth, and to get that, automatic qualifier, just, it says so much about, what this, the people that came before us in this league had done to establish it. So yeah, I think that's an incredible opportunity for the players and coaches in the league.
That's great. Now, so we didn't get to go into too much detail about the training facility. So we kind of mentioned the Fidelity Bank Worcester Ice Center. Are your actual strength and conditioning facilities also in that building, and how does that all work? Because I know it's a little bit off campus, if I did my geography right.
Yeah, the rink is about 10 minutes off from campus, so it's not far at all. It's just downtown, Worcester. But our strength and we have full-time strength and conditioning staff on campus. So we don't intend right now on, they have a fantastic training facility at the Fidelity Bank Center that is it's privately owned. And I know a lot of the teams that use that facility use that training facility, and it's a quality training facility. But we have terrific strength and conditioning staff here, and that will utilize that on campus.
Gotcha. And also, as I was doing the math, the Fidelity Bank Center is still only about 2.5 miles away from the Holy Cross arena. So I'm wondering, is there going to be that crosstown rivalry? Are you going to schedule some games against them? And how does Katie LaChapelle feel about having a crosstown rival these days?
She's been awesome with me. Interesting story. Before I took this job at Assumption, I was on my way to meet Katie at Holy Cross to take her volunteer assistance job. I was going to be their goalie coach, as I said, and I was going to continue at WPI. That was my plan. To get to further my my involvement in the women's game, and she was so gracious and so welcoming for me. And then what happened was this job popped up, and I told the people at Assumption, I said, listen, I'm going to meet the head coach at Holy Cross on Wednesday, and if she offers it to me on Wednesday, I'm taking it. So if you can get me in before Wednesday, and offer me the job, I'll take the job at Assumption. So I went in on Tuesday and took it. So Katie was really gracious, in that a manner for me. And yeah, we've talked about getting games on the schedule, and that looks like it will happen. I think for the city itself, it's an unbelievable opportunity. Obviously we've got a national level coach with Katie. So, certainly know what we're going to be up against when we play that game. But certainly exciting for the city, I think, and for our incoming players.
Yeah, and I think I'm not the expert on the area, but I think it's just a 5-minute drive up 290 between the two rinks. So
it's very close.
Yeah. So so speaking of Katie, she started up the Holy Cross Division I team. We had Logan Biddle talking about restarting the Robert Morris University program next year, and Tara Watchorn just started the program at Stonehill, and we also had Erin Hamlin at Merrimack, who she started. So I'm wondering, have you spoken to other coaches who started new programs like those coaches?
So I have spoken to Tara, but just, kind of, surface introduction. We see each other in the rinks while we're out recruiting. She's been fantastic, person, with regard to that. Kirsten Matthews really was, I reached out to her, with her experience at St. A's and what have you, to really get an understanding of the league, and the landscape. She's been extremely helpful. She's part of the Mass Hockey, development staff now, which I'm also, part of. So I've gotten to talk to her a bit. She's been very, very helpful. But as far as the team, coaches that have started their programs from scratch, like we're doing here at Assumption, I haven't reached out to any of them, not because I don't want their input. I will welcome any and all help. It's just a matter of, we hit the ground on June 30th, and it's been breakneck speed, to recruit and put a team together for the fall of 23. So I really haven't had time to do anything else. I think there's a handful of days, but since June 30th that I haven't been in the rink. So yeah, it's really a matter of time more than anything.
I can attest to that, because as I mentioned to you before we hit record, I've already seen you 3 times at 3 different events. So related to that, so let's just talk about putting together your team. Where are you at with having your staff put together and assistant coaches?
So the university, in the spring, we're going to post for a full-time assistant coach in the spring. Right now I have 2 assistant coaches with my blue and white sports program. One's more of a graduate assistant, and the other is, kind of grooming to take the job when I leave the blue and white team. And she's a former Division III head coach and very well versed in recruiting and understands it very well. So, she's recruiting the blue and white team, but, certainly there's she's a resource for me in regard to, hey, did you happen to see so-and-so, that type of thing. But that full-time assistant coach will not come into play until next spring.
Gotcha. And so obviously you're still coaching the blue and white team, and I know you're already doing recruiting, since I've seen you at events. What else are you doing? Like how are you able to do all this stuff at the same time? And what else are you doing to prepare for next year?
Lots of coffee. Lots of coffee. Well, I mean, recruiting is the lifeblood of your team. It really is the lifeblood of your team. If you're not recruiting, if you're not scouting, if you don't have your hand on that button, you're really, it limits what you're going to be able to do as a coach. Your players are everything to your program. So you really have to work to identify not only the best players, but the best players that fit what you do as a coach. And the best players, I mean, we're going to be in a very unique situation, being the newest Division I women's program in the country. We're up against some very talented teams, the Nuha, as I said, we're going to play each team in that league 4 times. And, I'm constantly, watching players who are currently playing and already committed to some of those Nuha teams. And I am utterly impressed with the ability of those players. So, for us, that's the challenge, is to continue scouting and recruiting and attracting players to our university, so that, when we do get there in the fall, we hit the ground, running. But I know it's going to be, we've got our hands full. It's going to be a challenge.
And I know as of this moment, you're not completely starting from ground zero. You already have at least 4 announced commits, 1 goalie, 2 D, and 1 forward that I saw on collegecommitments.com. And so this is the most important question, is what is your roster construction strategy? So for example, I was very surprised when I spoke with Tara Watchorn a couple of months ago, when she said, almost 3/4 of her players are going to be freshmen. How are you thinking about freshmen versus, bringing in more seasoned, experienced players from other teams?
So we actually have 9 committed players right now. whether or not they've posted those commitments is up to them. That's not something that, the NCAA limits what we can do in posting. So I can't make any of those notices. So yeah, we actually have 9. I think Tara's number is probably very spot on. 75% that might even be a little low for me. And I don't know if I think a lot of people are aware of the new transfer portal rules that went into effect. So the transfers can't announce until, they announce the NCAA field. And with that, that's March. By March, I can't be hoping to fill my roster with transfers in March. That's a very risky prospect. The women's game, I would say, varies from the men's game in the way that the young women commit to universities. Men's hockey, you could have a 20-year-old in July still uncommitted and considering their options. That's not an uncommon thing. The women's game, I've noticed that the women tend to follow a much more traditional, application process. Traditional meaning like a regular student, does their visits in the summer and the fall, and kind of decides between a couple of different schools and makes a decision probably pre-Christmas. That seems to be the norm. So if I were to wait till March, I think we'd be really taking a gamble with this. So yeah, I'm anticipating somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 new forwards, and at minimum of 6 defense, and a minimum of 2 goaltenders for the team. I do have some players on that blue and white team who are pretty talented, and have expressed some interest in joining that team. So they could potentially find their way into the roster, which would be great. It would give our team some on-campus experience, as well as players who are familiar with me and know my verbiage and things like that, and could help the younger kids. So my strategy is, that, and then you need to recruit a class every year. You have to be able to bring on a class. So if I were to bring in 25 freshmen, that really bogs things down for the future. And one of the things I'm really trying diligently to guard against is I don't want to bring anyone in here that isn't going to play in 4 years. That's not something I want to happen. It doesn't sit well with me as a person. I really want to make sure that the players I bring in here can impact our program, but can also stay and graduate, as members of our first class. So a smaller number is going to present challenges, but it's also going to, kind of meet my, my thought process with regard to what I want to see for these student athletes.
Beautiful. You actually ticked off a whole bunch of the questions I was going to ask you related to that one. So that's awesome. I know you need to run, so I'm just going to ask you 2 or 3 quick questions
Sure.
before you need to go. So the first one is, you mentioned, to my surprise, that you already have 9 commits.
Yeah.
As you look at the 9 who committed, what do you think was the number one thing that helped you convince them that Assumption was the right place for them to sign up for and committing to?
I think the Division I label and the new hot label is very attractive. It opens doors. Everyone I call or email responds. It's almost 100%. I very rarely reach out to somebody and don't get a response. That part, I think, is great. It opens the door. I think when people get on this campus and they look around, they realize what a great place it is. And when they go, I always have the student athletes do the tour with the admissions department. And when the admissions department does the tours, they talk about success in not just the classroom, but professional success and things like that. And when you hear all of that, and then you see the facilities and all the infrastructure here, I think it's a really attractive, university.
Great. And then let's flip it the other way, which is what is it that you're looking for from the players? What's like the key piece that is, the common strand between all the players that you're making offers to that you're looking for?
Well, I think, as a junior coach, my junior players used to ask me all the time, Coach, like, what makes a Division I college hockey player? And I would always tell them, I said, it takes one coach to like you. If one coach likes you and invites you to join their team and recruit you, and you go there, you're a Division I college hockey player. So there's not necessarily a secret sauce, so to speak. Every player's different. They bring different things to the table. I have certain things that I want from certain players, and I can look at another player and say, oh, she'd be really good in this capacity. Or she'll be really good, in a varying role than so-and-so would be. So each person I recruit as somebody I think that can contribute to our team in their own way. I won't have like a cookie cutter version of our team. So yeah, I would say that, each individual, gets my attention for whatever reason they do. And then I choose to recruit them based on that.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so we're going to run out of time. So can I request that sometime next summer, before you start your year, we reconnect and we talk about everything that's happened between now and then, and right before the start of your year, so we can have a second podcast with Jack Sweeney and the Assumption team.
Yeah, this is the first podcast I've ever done, and it's been enjoyable. I've really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk about Assumption University and talk about our both our teams here, but also to talk about the NUHA and how excited we are to be part of that. That was a great opportunity, today. So yeah, no, thank you so much for that.
Great. And so if folks wanting to get on your radar and say, hey, I want to learn more about the Assumption and Jack Sweeney, and maybe even get watched by you, how would they do that?
Well, it'd be pretty hard for you for them to miss me. But yeah, no, yeah. Obviously the Assumption website has all of our contact information on it. And one of the things about me, which I think is a big help, is I respond to 100% of the people who email me or call me. So any player anywhere who reaches out to us gets a response. And I do my best to follow up with them to try to identify whether or not this is a prospect that could make our team. So anybody who reaches out to us, I definitely put the time in to try and learn about them and see if there's somebody that can help our team.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, Jack. I really appreciate it, and best of luck over the next year.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Ray. I really appreciated being here.
I really want to thank Jack for coming on the podcast. It was great to learn about his extensive coaching history, to learn more about Assumption University, as well as his recruiting plans for his first-year D1 women's team. To learn more about the Assumption program or connect directly with Jack, you can find links in the show notes to the team website and Jack's Champs app profile. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Before you go, I wanted to share more about the app in Champs app. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know I spend a lot of time talking with coaches, parents, and players about the hockey recruiting process. One of the key questions that people want to know is, how does a player get noticed by college coaches? While there are many ways to be discovered, the easiest way to get on a college's radar is to send a coach an email and provide them all the information they need to assess if you are a player worth keeping their eyes on. That's where the app part of Champs app comes in. Champs app was designed based on all the conversations and feedback we received about the recruiting process. And we've built a tool to help players and coaches connect with a ton of the information they want to know. It all starts with creating a free, beautiful Champs app profile. After that, there's some pretty magical things that can happen to help make the recruiting process a little less overwhelming. Your Champs app profile includes all the basic academic, personal, and athletic information coaches want to know. Then, by including video, schedule information, and your coach's contact details, colleges can easily start their evaluation process. You just copy and paste your personalized link and send it to coaches so they can see your public player profile without even having to log in or create a Champs app account. Or you can connect directly with coaches on Champs app. More and more coaches are creating their own Champs app profiles and connecting with players themselves every day. Now coaches can have all the information they need to assess where you might fit in their recruiting plans. Even better, college coaches can track your progress throughout the winter and showcase seasons, because as you make changes to your profile, coaches will get notified to your updates. And in the future, we will be adding even more amazing features to improve your visibility to the recruiting process and hopefully increase your odds of success. If you want to see what a player or coach profile looks like before you start your own, look in the show notes to see some examples. My kids and I have used Champs app for their recruiting process. In fact, my son was invited to a AAA tryout thanks to his Champs app profile. So go to www.champs.app and start your player or coach profile. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete most of your key information. Good luck, and please let us know how it helped with your recruiting journey.